Okay, this is just going to be the very basics on a Bitcoin transaction. And you can think of all Bitcoin transactions as mini programs. They all contain Bitcoin script, even when you're just sending Bitcoin from one person to another. There's script, and script is the native language that Satoshi built into the Bitcoin system. So let's think of a basic transaction. You have to pay a bill, and so you collect some coins that are in your digital wallet to pay the bill. And so you put the exact amount of the bill into the transaction, and then any change from those 4 coins or several coins that you've collected will be sent back to your wallet. So that's the basics. And then, so I'll just describe here what these elements are. In every transaction, there is a version number. There are transaction inputs, transaction outputs, and then the lock time, which is the block height or time at which the transaction will enter the block. Usually it's right away. There's other types of transactions that can utilize this advanced feature, but we're not going to go over that right now. So I've got a tool that I can show you where we can walk through all this. It's called a transaction explorer, and I used a Python script for this. There are some occasions, I have not identified why, where this parser doesn't work, and I haven't taken the time to debug it, but it will work for many of the transactions. So what we do is we have to go get a transaction hash. So we go to the What's on Chain block explorer, and you can see that, let's just up here. So there's a block. We're in block number 873,816, that block. And if we go down here, we see all the transactions in a block. So let's just take one that has an operaturn. So then operaturn means there's arbitrary data, and so it's going to be a longer one. So let me just grab this TXID, and I'll go back to my transaction explorer, and I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to fetch this transaction. Okay. So you see we have all of this hexadecimal code here. This is representing data. And this parser is taking all of this raw transaction data, and it is parsing it out. So I mentioned before that there are 4 elements, and I mean, technically speaking, there are 6 elements, because you have to say the quantity of transaction inputs and quantity of transaction outputs. But the overarching elements are 4. So let's walk through them from our example. So the list of inputs, you can see here, let's see. We only have 1 input here. And you know that by there's not anything past 1.5. So I'm going to pop back to the Transaction Explorer. And if you see here on inputs, the transaction elements illustration, and you can see that there are 5 elements for every input. Okay, so if we go back here, there's 1 input, and this input has 5 elements. And then we have here the quantity of output, so that's who the coin is being sent to. And we have 1 output. So I'm not sure what is contained in this, but there are ways to find out what this translates to in the output. So let me just scroll down, and you can see that the transaction and lock time is there too. So let's go back here, and we're going to grab another one. Let's grab this one and see what it says. And I will refresh this screen, put the hash in, and we'll fetch this transaction. So this is a smaller raw transaction data. And again, we only have 1 input, See one input, and we have two outputs. So there must have been some change, or possibly the reason for this is that there was some change sent back to the originator's wallet. I'm going to do one more to show you something fun. So let's go to this zero index transaction, and go back to our transaction explorer. Oops. And enter this. Fetch transaction. All right, so this is again also small, but look at this. I have some red text in here because I programmed into the Python script to be able to identify if it is a Coinbase transaction. So what is a Coinbase transaction? Every single block has as its first transaction a Coinbase transaction. And this is the block reward, also called the block subsidy, that goes to the miner that won this the permission to enter this block into the public ledger. So this Coinbase transaction is their payment. And so there is one input and one output. And you'll find that Coinbase transaction on every single block. And you can see the TXID of the input is all zeros. So let's see what else I can show you. So, all right, so let me go here and transaction inputs. Again, there are those 5 elements, and the outputs, there are 3. So in my payment example with where you're paying the bill, I think I said there were 4 coins. We haven't seen any of the examples showing 4 inputs, but that's the inputs are the coins that you put into the transaction, and each input will have an unlock script, which is basically your signature. And the outputs, again, is who you're sending it to, and if any change goes back to the originator. There are lots more complex transactions. This is just the basic one. So I hope that is helpful.